Well, hello and good evening, everyone. Or if in fact you're watching the recording, good day or whatever time it is you're choosing to watch. This is my little talk. It's a brand new one on shooting and editing video shot with your DSLR or compact system camera. Hands up those who've tried recording video on either of those sorts of camera. A few, right, okay. How many have edited the results? Okay. How many are happy with the results? Less number. Right you are. Okie dokie. Well, the first part of the evening, it is in two halves with a little break in the middle. First half is a relatively short PowerPoint in true tech evening fashion. If you've got a question during it, please unmute your mic and ask the question rather than wait until the end. I am stopping at the end to answer any other questions, but I think it's probably best if you ask a question while it's fresh in everyone's minds. Okay, so without more to do, I shall share a screen. Okay, so that's my title. I know it had another title on the advert, but I figured Jim does video, is what it's all about. And I'd stress this is a brief tech session. This isn't meant to be a great big in-depth thing. So let's make a start. Essentials. What are the essentials when you're looking at shooting and editing on a camera? But little point, this is relevant to DSLRs and CSCs, but of course you can use an iPhone or similar. Other smartphones are available. And a lot of the information that I'm giving is relevant to those sort of devices as well. Now you need a microphone. Now this might not be so obvious because you're going to say, well, my camera or even the iPhone has got a microphone. Well, yes, it has, but it probably isn't great. They can be useful, but sound quality, handling noise, the polar pickup pattern of the mics won't be as good as the other things that you can buy. And we'll go on to that in a little while. Now, a storyboard. Unless all you're doing is capturing your kids playing, I think you need a good idea of the story you're trying to tell. And you're going to want a fast memory card, and hopefully two. Video files do use quite a lot of memory. Spare battery. I'm hoping that most people have got a spare battery for their camera. I discovered that using live view on my Nikon gets through the battery at a far greater rate than I expected it would. And I was quite glad of having a spare battery around. You might find that a compact system camera will last longer, but I still think a spare is a good idea. And for the editing, you will need a reasonably powerful computer. You'll need at least a multi-core i5 and about 8 gig of RAM. That's the minimum that most software talks about. And we all know the minimum is actually, it'll just about crawl along. And obviously you need some software. Apple's come with iMovie preloaded. Windows 10 does have something within its Photos app. And of course, there's loads of other free software and of course ones to buy as well. So let's think about the camera. Do read the manual. You're probably very familiar with it when you're taking stills, but you might not have read the bit about video. And depends on how good the manuals are, but I would read it. You're going to have to familiarise yourself. And decide what you want your final video for. I'd always recommend shooting at full HD. If you want to make it smaller than that post-edit, well, that's easy. But if you go to upscale from something smaller, that rarely looks any good. And lens choice. I think for video, you need a standard zoom. You know, I've suggested 24 to 70 full frame equivalent, but something of that sort. And better if it's got a constant aperture, but that just keeps the ISO more stable. Now, the point about autofocus, CSCs, in my experience, will and probably quite silently autofocus while you're doing video. Certainly using my D750, you can make it autofocus, but you really hear the lens doing it. So it's not a great idea, really. But we'll come on to other things to do with focus in a moment. And practice. You need to feel confident. If you're out there making a film with other people, you don't want to come across as fumbling. You want to know what you're doing, or at least look as though you know what you're doing. And while you're filming, make any changes in zoom, pan, tilt, etc. fairly fluid, unless, of course, you're going for wobbly vision. Personally, I hate wobbly vision, but that's another story. Let's look at memory briefly. Fast. You may or may not have considered all of this, but you want sustained write speeds of 30 megabits or even 60. They often quote the read speed. It's not you want the write speed. With SD cards, look for those figures there, and it's well worth doing that. And you want a decent size. As I say, on my D750, the maximum movie file size is 4 gigs. At this point, it stops recording. You can start again straight away, and it creates another new file. And at the highest quality, this is 10 minutes. So you make a choice. Do you want more recording time, or do you want the best quality? And quality of the memory. Hopefully, we're all aware of this. But it is worth looking at reviews, because whenever I've looked at reviews of memory cards, you'd be amazed. Even good makes can sometimes show up as not as fast as you'd like them to be. So always have a look, read the reviews. Now, the microphones. A lot of people forget about sound. It really upsets sound engineers. The simplest choice is a gun mic mounted on the hot shoe. I've got some photographs after this page just to show you. You can go and look at this website. There's plenty of companies out there that sell it. Gear for Music is a company I've used. I had no problems with them, so that was an easy one to go for. Rode are an Australian maker of such mics. Decent prices, good quality. You even see the BBC using them. And to get an appreciation of what difference a good mic makes, have a look at this video. I'm not going to show it now for obvious reasons. It's about 10 minutes long. But when you play this back, just click on the link, hopefully, and just have a look. It's quite amazing what difference it does make. Now, camera-mounted mics. They're only really good for capturing audio from a couple of meters away. If the sound source is further away, you actually want to get the mic as close as possible. And there are various options for this. Radio mics, and again, Rode are one that do kit for cameras. You mount the base station on the hot shoe, plug it into the camera's microphone socket, battery powered, and you can have the sending bit, the transmitter, which in this instance actually has a microphone built in, and that you can stick on a tripod, or you can attach it to a pole, all sorts of things, and you can see the prices. Portable audio recorders. If you've not come across these, they're very useful. And in some ways, these are quite a good catch-all. Only 85 quid or thereabouts. You can pay a lot more, of course. Downside is that you've got to resync the audio in post, which is a bit of an issue, or can be. And it's one of the reasons why you might want to use the inbuilt camera mic, because you can obviously therefore use the sound that the camera picked up and use that to make sure you're in sync. And you'll have seen this quite a lot recently on the news. Mic on a pole can be held by an assistant, or it can be held by the interviewer. And it's usually wired to the camera. And you'll see something called a dead cat often on the end of the microphone. It's that woolly thing, and it's designed to reduce wind noise and such. That is an example of the Rode. That's not a dead cat, that's just a foam windshield. That comes free, you have to pay for the dead cat. That particular mic is battery powered. You get an idea of its size by the hot shoe mount. And as you can see, it just plugs into the 2.5mm mic socket on your camera. That's the radio mics that I was talking about. The part on the left is the transmitter, and you can see it does have a microphone built in at the front there, but you can plug an external mic into it as well. And then the receiver sits on the hot shoe of the camera, plugs in, and never used one, but I suspect that they would be really quite nice to use. And there is, on top of a Canon, there is one of the solid state recorders. You can see it's got pair of stereo mics. That one's made by Tascam, other makes are available. Doesn't plug into the camera, so you record on its memory card, but high quality, very useful, and of course you can use it remotely from the camera. It can have a tripod mount, so that's really quite useful. Editing software. Now, before you do anything else, try the package that was included. I think Windows does come with, pardon me, Windows comes with one. Certainly Macs do, and it'll be tailored to your computer, and it's worth a try. It probably won't be as flashy as it might be elsewhere, but it's free. Next option, Google free editing software. Some is completely free, some can be tried. I think Premiere Elements get 30 days, and in fact I did try Premiere Elements for 30 days and I finally bought it. More of that again as we go on. Do read reviews before you choose. As I say, virtually all will give you a few days, might only be 7 days, free trial. And I think it's always worth having a read and see what other people think, because certainly if they've got more experience than you, it'll give you a start at any rate. But I mentioned this at the start, do check the minimum hardware that the software package advises. You might find that the i5 just isn't strong enough. And like I said there, some years ago, I had a custom built PC with an i7, had a separate system drive, 2 plug-in media drive, loads of RAM, high-spec graphics card, and a dedicated in-out board using with Adobe Premiere Pro. It was great, really expensive, and occasionally even it struggled. If you've got several video tracks running and audio tracks and so forth, and you've got effects going on, so it's worth checking before you buy, is what I would say to that. Storyboard. How many people have done a storyboard? Well, I can't see you all, so don't bother putting your hands up. Hopefully you have done one, even in your head. It's useful, very useful when making an AV, and I would say it's even more important if you're doing a video presentation. So what is it? Well, you decide what the story is, you decide how it'll start, what will make up the bulk of the show, and how you'll finish it. It's a bit like a regular TV programme, and you'll probably want to add at least an opening title and a closing credit of some sort. Oh, and a little point about closing credits. If you use music, even if the music is copyright free, as it were, do give the musician and the track a credit. It's often required, but I would suggest that it's always worth doing it. You don't know who's going to see it at some point in the future. Now, the audio. Will you be using only location audio, or do you want to add effects, music, voiceovers? And consider recording some wild track audio. What's wild track audio, I hear you say? It's audio you record when the video isn't important, and what you want is the audio, in simple terms. So it could be bird song, it could be traffic noise, it could be general effects in a pub, anything like that. I'll mention this. Many cameras restrict audio files to a particular size. As I say, 4 gigs is what I'm used to. Can only be 10 minutes. So you need to think about recording breaks. Now, this could be an issue if you try to record a long thing like a play, a music event or something. So what you would need if you say you're doing a concert is you might want to stop during applause and then restart again. And if you've never done a storyboard before, some people do them in pictures like a child's storybook. You are telling somebody else a story, so make sure that you're actually going to get the main points across. And you look at the storyboard, you go through it and you think, have I covered everything? And if you have, that's great. If you haven't, and you've shot it, then you've got a problem. Camera techniques. To hold or not to hold, with apologies to Shakespeare. Yeah, to hold or not to hold. DSLRs are not ideal for video filming, in my opinion. The form factor is designed for stills, and mostly for peering through the viewfinder at that. CSCs are better because they're smaller and lighter, but they've still got the same form factor. They're not an ideal shape, in my view, for doing video. Yeah, okay, I know video is my field, but I would much rather have a video camera to be honest, than a DSLR. However, why do people use DSLRs? Well, it's because they are actually fairly cheap in relation to video cameras. And of course, the lenses, you might think your lenses are expensive. Go and have a look at some interchangeable lenses for video cameras, and then tell me that your Nikons and your Canon lenses are expensive. And you might be able to use the camera in viewfinder mode. I don't think that's a good idea when doing video. I'd always use a monitor. That is, of course, your choice. If you are using a tripod, then you might want to invest in a video head because they are designed for the job. They've got fluid damping, which is very useful if you're doing pans, tilts, and so forth, because it damps down any shake. You can use an ordinary head, just adjust the friction so it works nicely for you. I would suggest locking the horizontal axis if it's a three-way one, because level as you pan around. So there you are. If you are hand holding, and unless you're wanting wobbly vision, try to concentrate and keep the horizontal. And do try to avoid the usual problem that people do when they give somebody a video camera and they wave it all over the place. They think it's great. It's painful to watch. And if you look at TV, you generally speaking don't see it. It is a particular thing of mine when you get a director who wants the appearance of a handheld camera. So what you've got is people, the cameraman is asked to very slightly shake the camera. I've got to tell you, professional cameramen spend a lot of time making sure that they don't shake the camera when they're holding it. So it's, yeah, it's a director's choice. The other thing that most video cameras come with, of course, is an electric zoom with a zoom in and out knob. Yes, you can get those on some cameras, but on some stills cameras. But you don't want to keep zooming in and out. You want to have a look at your shot. If you're zooming in or zooming out, there's got to be a reason for it. Like you want to concentrate on something and then show it in context, or you start with a wide angle and zooming in close, and it's because you want to concentrate the viewer on a particular item. So focus and zoom. Your chosen body and lens may offer autofocus while recording, but what if it doesn't? Well, if you use a tripod and focus, if you need to, manually. Stops the camera hunting, so probably a good idea to use manual. If you're hand holding a DSLR, I'd say that panning, moving, zooming, and trying to focus while you're doing that is really challenging. And I would suggest, unless you've got to, and there's a good reason for it, it's probably best to try to avoid it. So you've done your storyboard, so you set up variations as separate shots and edit together in post. That's part of what editing is all about. It's actually making the shots go together. You probably do this if you're taking a still. You'll zoom in or out. You'll unconsciously, I wouldn't mind that, pardon me, you'll adjust the shot as you zoom in and out. You should be doing it usually when you're zooming in and out with video. usually, as I say, it's because you're trying to focus on something. But if you just zoom straight in, it often looks a bit peculiar. That's the end of part one. You can turn your mics back on and ask some questions.
Jim, can I ask a question? It's Bob here.
Yeah.
You sometimes see, or you can buy these kind of frames that go around your body and allow you to sort of allegedly keep the camera still. I mean, they're not cheap, but do you think they're worth considering if you're doing serious video?
If you see people that are doing, say, wedding videos or anything more serious using DSLRs, yes, they've always got them if they're hand holding, and they do make a big difference. But they are quite expensive, and you can't be a shrinking violet when you've got one of those. So if you're out in public, you're pretty obvious if you've got that. I think that's something you do need to think about when you're doing this is what are you trying to achieve? You know, what are you videoing? If it's a family event, then people are likely to be quite accommodating. If you're actually trying to shoot something in a public place, which you're perfectly entitled to do, then you're going to be even more noticeable than if you're taking stills.
Jim, I agree with you. Taking videos with a video camera is far, far easier, and the results are far, far better than trying to use your still camera with its video abilities. I've been taking video all of my children's life, which is about 50 years. And the results I've got with a video camera specifically designed to take video are far, far better than anything that I've achieved latterly trying to use my standard camera, my SLR.
Yes, I mean, that was really the thing I was saying, is that it's much harder, I think, to get a decent result unless you invest, as Bob was saying, in special camera mounts. However, the question I've got to ask is the picture quality as good with your video camera?
I think it probably is. Probably. I haven't done a direct comparison, but I think it's probably as good.
Because that is the thing about DSLRs, that they've got bigger sensors almost always than video cameras.
Yeah.
Unless you're getting into the professional realm, of course.
It's Shannon here. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I was just wondering, like, what inspired you to start getting into video editing and filming?
That will be the BBC. In case some don't know, I worked for the Beeb for most of my working life. And I reckon I had 3 careers and a job. The first career I had in the Beeb was 10 years as broadcast trained electronics engineer. The next 10 years were in videotape. And then from there, I became the manager of the, I had to form it actually. I created post-production at Pebble Mill. So I've had 20 years in the industry, if you like. You could say, however, why was it that I went into that in the first place when I was working at the Beeb? I had the opportunity, I think, is what I would say. I was given a chance to try it out, liked it, and stayed. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Jim, can I ask you a question? You were talking about the challenge of getting a good sound recording.
Yes.
Now, I can understand that if you are going to clearly record somebody's voice and what they're saying, you need to be careful about that. But are there other circumstances where you should make the effort to have something other than the recording that's integral to your camera?
Well, I can give you one very good one, John. I've ended up being the official photographer for a choir. And thus far, that's involved obviously producing stills. But not long before the lockdown happened, they'd seen another choir had produced a little video for one of their Christmas concerts. And they said, could I take some video? And I thought, well, I probably can do, yeah, not a problem. But just doing a test recording using the onboard mic on the camera just proved how limiting it really is. If you're trying to do something like that, then you really need to think about how you're going to capture decent audio. And I did think to myself, well, I could get a gun mic on top of the camera and put that sort of back in the audience. But the problem is with the gun mic is, yes, it picks sound up from a fairly narrow angle, but it doesn't make the sound any closer. So if you're 30 feet away, you can't beat the laws of physics. If the microphone is 30 feet from the sound, it's going to sound like it's 30 feet away. And you've got to record it and then play it back to realise just how the technical term is loose that sound is. So, I mean, I was actually, before the lockdown, wondering what the best approach was. And because I've actually got a radio mic, a little bit like the one we've got at the WI Hall, I thought, well, the answer there is to put a mic effectively by the conductor, a radio mic, and then pick that up at the base station and plug that into the camera. So that would have been the quick fix. Another way of doing it, I showed you that Tascam recorder on top of the camera. Well, that would have been ideal, stuck on a little tripod, low down in front of the choir. That would have worked perfectly well.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Thank you, Jim. Before I do, isn't it raining hard behind Phil?
Yes, it is.
Down his
Oh,
window.
yes, it is. I was going to ask you if you still got your storm, because I think it's heading my way. The sky's gone black.
Right. My question, Jim,
Yes.
is probably a very simple one, and it probably falls into the category of, have you read your manual properly?
Oh, go on.
It's about autofocus. When I've used my the video on my DSLR,
yep,
I find it extremely difficult to get it to focus from something that's far away to something that's nearer.
Yes.
Because it isn't auto. Is there something I should be doing to get it to do that, to autofocus, or should it be automatic?
My experience is that DSLRs aren't great at this. And compact system cameras are a darn sight better.
Right.
Quite why that should be, if you think about it, if you're with your DSLR and you're in live view, how good is a DSLR at focusing in live view?
Not too
clunky. How good is a CSC? Usually instant. That kind of tells you what you need to know. So, I mean, you could argue that Panasonic got it right all along with their high-end camera, that it was designed, although it looks like a stills camera, it was designed really from the ground up to be a good video camera. And certainly Panasonic, of course, got a long history of being in broadcast, so they're well used to making their stuff work. So I think it is quite literally, it's that the people that make DSLRs in general haven't thought really about making them good video cameras. I think they've added it on because they can, rather than spending much time on it.
So basically, if we've got a DSLR that we take away on a holiday with us, we shouldn't use it to take videos. We should take another camera along, possibly a video camera.
Well, no, you can perfectly well use your DSLR, but you might have to manually focus it to get the best results.
Yeah.
Which might not be what you want to do, but that's possibly the answer.
There's a number of videos on YouTube I've seen that compare Panasonic and Olympus with automatic focusing, and it's quite interesting how they go through it and what they explain. You might, if you have a look on there, you might find some of them helpful on automatic focusing, give you an idea what to look for.
Yeah. But the benefit of having a DSLR with a video capability is that you only have one camera.
On camera, yeah.
So I could leave it behind and take my Panasonic, and then it would be jolly good at videos and not quite so useful on everything else.
Probably very true, yes.
Mm.
Jim,
Any other questions?
Just one quick one. Well, it might. I suspect it's a quick answer, for potentially much longer. But you suggested that HD quality would be sufficient for most people's purposes.
Yeah.
A lot of the cameras are pushing now 4K and even 8K, which
Yeah.
burn up memory and all sorts of things. For practical purposes for us here, is it really worth considering 4K, or should we just not bother?
The issue, I think, with 4K is computer power. You will find a program on a computer will work perfectly happy at HD, but you try and put 4K through it, and it might not work at all, or it might really struggle, just because of the amount of data it's having to process. So unless you've a good reason to make 4K, I would have said HD is probably good enough. But yeah, I mean, as ever, you can try it for yourself and see how it works. If your camera will do 4K, of course.
Can I just ask another question? It's Shannon again.
Yeah, hi Shannon.
Hiya. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of like DSLRs or the CSC cameras, like, what's your favourite brand of camera? Do you prefer Nikon or Canon or Panasonic?
Oh, loaded question. If it's, and it's a personal choice. If it's DSLRs, I prefer Nikon, but that's because I've had them for a number of years, so I've got Nikon bits. If it's anything else, then probably the Panasonic Lumix. But that's only because, again, that's a brand I'm used to. Olympus, I'm sure, are just as good, and might indeed be better in certain things. It's like all these things. One thing I have noticed, I'm sure if you've got more than one brand, anybody yourself, two different brands won't analyze a color scene in quite the same way. In other words, when you look at the results, they won't quite match. In some cases, they won't match at all without corrective work. And that's something to do with the way the individual manufacturers, do the maths, as it were, in the camera. But I mean, if I was buying another compact system camera, I'd almost certainly, I think, be buying a Lumix. Any other questions? I'm guessing that's a no. Right. Bob, I think probably at this point, we'll call it a break.